Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Una. This is my first video for Booktube, so I thought I'd do the Booktube Newbie tag just to have something up to get to know me as a person, as a reader. We'll see how it goes. I did brainstorm my answers ahead of time, but we're gonna see if that makes things feel really unnatural. I haven't filmed a YouTube video in several months, so we'll see. So the first question in this tag is, why did you start this channel? Which is a lofty question for a first video because I haven't really, but I think basically I've been reading a lot, basically the past 7 or 8 months. I've been watching a lot of Booktube. I've been watching Booktube for longer than I've been like in this current reading fixation, but I have been watching a lot of Booktube recently, and I've been wanting to make YouTube videos. I used to I will eventually again someday, but I used to make videos on a makeup themed, a project planning themed YouTube channel for about 2 years, and it was a lot of fun and I really enjoyed it. I just haven't been that into wearing makeup, so there's not a lot to talk about in that arena, but I have been into reading books, so I thought I'd give it a try. 2 is, what are you excited for about this channel? I'm excited to be able to talk more. I'm a yapper, most definitely, especially about books. I love writing book reviews. I love going to book clubs. Even when sometimes I go and I'm like, I don't have that many thoughts, and then I end up talking like constantly. So I'm excited to talk more. I'm excited to maybe try a reading vlog. My reading style is complete chaos. I don't know if anyone else can relate, but I read like 5 to 10 books at a time. I'm very mood reader dependent, so like I'll start something because I'm in the mood and then I'm in the mood, you know, I shift around. So I'm really curious what it might look like if I tried to do a reading vlog. I think I did kind of try once before, but I completely lost track of it. It was like doing updates. It did not go well. But yeah, I really love watching TBR videos. I'd love to try doing a TBR video if I felt like I could stick to a TBR at all. I don't know, it's tricky. But I'm excited to try those things out and to just be part of this space and be creating videos again. I think they're really fun. I like to look back on them and like see what I was talking about, that kind of thing. The third question is, why do you love reading? I feel like this is tough, like, I don't know. Any answer is gonna sound kind of cheesy, but I love stories, I love people, I love what books can teach us about being a person, both fiction and nonfiction. I mean, in terms of nonfiction, I like love history, so I'm always really into that. Memoirs and stuff, like those kinds of stories about being a person and what they can teach us, and also just for fun. I love just like a fun, silly book, low stakes or like overly dramatic. I love most kinds of books, so yeah. The fourth question is, what book or series got you into reading? I find this hard to answer because I have been a big reader my whole life, so I don't know. I was really into it. Harry Potter as a kid. I don't like to love to talk about it now, but I was one of those kids. I really loved Bone, the graphic novels, but I wouldn't say that those got me into reading because I was already a really big reader, and another couple like favorite series of all time were like Lord of the Rings and The Raven Boys, but I think what got me into reading most recently, again, I mean, I've always read like a little bit here and there, but I got a Kindle and there were a couple like internet popular books I really wanted to read, and Red, White, and Blue was one of the first ones I read when I got my Kindle, and I had Kindle Unlimited for a little bit back last summer, about a year ago, and then again in the winter. What really got me back into reading was I really had the urge to reread The Hunger Games, so I'd call it as The Hunger Games is definitely one of the series that got me back into reading most recently. Question number 5 is, what questions would you ask your favorite booktubers? This is kind of funny. I don't know. I don't feel like I feel like I get what I need out of booktubers. I don't necessarily super want to ask them more questions. I feel like they're here to chat about books and I listen to them chat about books, but one thing I am curious about is like how people determine ratings. I just watched a really good video on this, maybe I'll link it in the description, but just like kind of the problem with the 5-star rating system and how it kind of like makes things overly simplistic, and then people have different ideas about what's a 3-star, what's a 5-star, that can cause tensions. So I mean, I certainly have a pretty well developed idea, I think, about what my ratings mean, but I would be curious for a lot of people I follow how exactly they determine 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, 1-star. Do they even give 1-stars? I don't really give 1-star. Like, I feel like if I hated anything enough to give it a 1-star, I'd probably just stop reading it. So basically the lowest I usually give is like 2 stars. But yeah, I think that's an interesting question. The next question is, what challenges do you think starting a booktube channel will be the hardest? This doesn't make grammatical sense, but that's okay. What challenges do you think starting a booktube channel will be the hardest to overcome? That's not anything, but I think consistency, as evidenced by my other YouTube channel, I'm not always the most consistent. Motivation, that's kind of what leads to a lack of consistency, and like finding the rhythm of what I want to make videos about and how those videos are made. Do I film things while I'm reading books? Do I do things at the beginning of the month, at the end of the month, like that whole kind of thing? Just figuring out what rhythm feels like it's gonna work for me. It's gonna be the most fun for me, and what's like boring or too much work, or I feel like I'm repeating myself, you know, that kind of thing. Next is, when did you start reading? I started reading when I was like a kid, and I basically never stopped. I started my Goodreads in 2015 and my Storygraph this year, because Goodreads is owned by Amazon, and I'm like, eh. And kind of like I said before, I have always been reading. 2020 was probably my worst year on record of reading. I only read 5 books, but the past couple years I've been keeping it up okay. And then in July of last year is when my reading really picked up again, and I started reading tons and tons and tons, and now I'm reading more than I have ever read before. So yeah. The next question is, where do you read? I read everywhere. I'm someone who brings books with me constantly, even if it's very unlikely that I will have a chance to read, especially now that I have a Kindle or like any kind of e-reader. I feel like it's just so convenient for bringing everywhere. It fits in my little, I have like a fanny pack bag, so I just bring it everywhere. But especially I love to read in my bed. It's pretty cozy. I have like lights in my room and stuff. I love reading on the bus because it like makes me focus, and like I'm just gonna be here on the bus. There's nothing else I can do except look at my phone, so I gotta read. And for audiobooks, I just, whenever I'm getting somewhere, whether it be walking or anything, I bike a lot, and I like listening to an audiobook on the bike. So yeah. Okay, the next question is, what kinds of books do you like to read? This is tough because I like to read a lot of different kinds of books, but I looked at my top genres this year on Storygraph, I think, or of all time, maybe. But anyway, they are fantasy is the most by like a lot. Then LGBT, which is not a genre, but that's okay. I do love LGBT themes in books. Young adult, also not really a genre, but that's okay. Then romance, and then mystery. So that shows you by numbers what I tend to read the most. I would say subjectively, I love fantasy. I read a lot of fantasy. I also really like kind of literary, contemporary type of stories, particularly ones about like people figuring themselves out, dealing with life, and like if they're a little bit weird, I like that too. And memoirs, I really do love memoirs. And yeah, I think it's kind of funny. Sometimes the more you read a genre, the less likely, I don't know, like I was looking at my top read genres versus the genres that have given me the most 5 stars this year, and like fantasy is such a top read genre, but I have it's all across the board in fantasy. Like I read fantasies that are 2 stars, I read fantasies that are 5 stars, whichever is like nonfiction, I tend to read like only like the nonfictions that I read and actually finish tend to be like 5 stars. Like it's like a lot of the time, like 60% of the time or something, compared to other genres. So yeah. And finally, this is maybe an optional question, not everyone does this one, but what does your book collection look like? So this is my bookshelf in my apartment. It's kind of small. If you can see, there's also another shelf down there. But this is what it looks like. I do have a couple library books on top and right there as well. I'm a big library person. I don't buy a lot of books because I don't have a lot of spare money to spend on books, and I don't have a space for a lot of books. I do have a lot of books in my childhood home, where my parents live that I would consider my books, but I don't have the space for them nor the inclination to get them here, which would add a lot of middle grade, child, and young adult books. Currently, the way my shelf is set up is these are all read books of a variety of genres. This is mostly nonfiction, generic nonfiction like history and stuff, Jewish nonfiction, and then this is Jewish fiction. I'm also Jewish, that impacts the books that I own. And then on the bottom is all of my fiction and nonfiction, some nonfiction TBR, but it's more like newer books that I own and shorter books. I don't know. It's a little bit messy. And then over there I have a smaller bookshelf with a couple like classics and a couple read fantasy books. So that made probably 0 sense because I'm still really working on the organization and I keep putting off my own TBR books for library books and books I get from Libby. So at some point I'll have to address that, but that point is not today. I have a lot of things in motion. I really love the Storygraph challenges, so those are what have been motivating me a lot recently. And yeah, anyway, that's what my book collection looks like right now. I have a couple more books over there, but yeah, this is fun. Hopefully as a little way to get to know me as a reader, and then I can see what the heck else I'm gonna come up with to post. So yeah, thanks for watching this if you did, and hopefully I'll see you in a video sometime soon.